The announcement crackled through the Academy's speaker system like a death sentence wrapped in bureaucratic pleasantry. All first-year students report to Combat Hall 7 for mandatory dueling assessment. Attendance is compulsory. Weapons will be provided. Mira Chen sat in the back of Advanced Xenolinguistics, her fingers frozen over her tablet. Around her, the other students, all aliens, began gathering their things with the casual ease of predators preparing for a hunt. The Veltri girl in front of her, scales shimmering purple under the fluorescent lights, actually laughed. Finally, she hissed to her friend, "Time to show these humans where they belong." Mira's jaw tightened. She said nothing. She had learned, in 6 brutal months at the Galactic Unity Academy, that saying nothing was sometimes the only weapon she had. The walk to Combat Hall 7 felt like a funeral march. Mira moved through corridors filled with students twice her size, 3 times her strength. Species had been conquering star systems while humanity was still figuring out fire. They looked at her the way wolves look at sheep, hungry, amused, certain of how this would end. Combat Hall 7 was enormous. The ceiling soared 30 meters high, designed to accommodate the winged Caliph and the towering Brashian warriors. The floor was polished obsidian, ancient and scarred from countless duels. Holographic displays lined the walls, ready to project scores and rankings for all to see. And there, standing in neat rows on weapon racks, were the training sabers. Mira had seen them before. Elegant things, designed by the consortium's finest engineers. They glowed with a soft blue light, their edges programmed to deliver pain without permanent damage. They were perfectly balanced, perfectly safe, perfectly calibrated to remind humans exactly how outclassed they were. "Chen!" The voice belonged to Instructor Voss, a Krellian with 4 arms and a face that looked like someone had carved anger into stone. He stood at the center of the hall, his uniform pristine, his eyes cold. "You're late." "I'm not late, sir. I'm exactly on time." For a human, on time is late. Take your position. Mira walked to her designated spot, marked with a holographic number 17. Around her, 40 other students arranged themselves in a perfect grid. She was the only human. She was always the only human. "Today," Voss announced, his voice echoing through the hall, "you will demonstrate basic combat proficiency. You will be paired randomly. You will fight until one combatant yields or is incapacitated. The training sabers are non-lethal, but will cause significant discomfort. Consider this motivation to improve." A ripple of laughter moved through the students. Mira kept her face blank. "When your number is called, approach the rack and select your weapon. First pairing, 7 and 23. 2 Veltri stepped forward, their movements fluid and predatory. They selected their sabers, bowed to each other with mocking formality, and began to circle. The fight lasted 12 seconds. It was brutal, efficient, and beautiful in its violence. Second pairing, 12 and 31. More fights, more displays of alien superiority. A Brashian who moved like a mountain given consciousness. A Caliph whose wings created distracting air currents, while her blade found every opening. A Nexari whose 4 eyes tracked multiple angles simultaneously. Mira watched them all. She watched their footwork, their timing, their tells. She watched the way the training sabers hummed and sparked when they connected. She watched and she waited. 17 pairing. 17 and 29. Her number. Finally, Mira stepped forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. Across the hall, her opponent emerged from the grid. Krix Volmar, son of Admiral Volmar, heir to one of the most powerful military families in the consortium. And as luck would have it, the student who had made Mira's life a living nightmare since orientation day. Krix was Veltri, 2 meters of scaled muscle and aristocratic cruelty. His crest, the ridge of bone and cartilage that ran from his forehead to back of the skull, flushed deep crimson with anticipation. He smiled at her, showing teeth designed for tearing flesh. Finally, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I've been waiting for this, little mammal." Mira approached the weapon rack. Her hand reached for a training saber, and stopped. Something was wrong. Something was different. She could feel it, a whisper at the edge of her consciousness, a pull she couldn't explain. Her fingers moved past the glowing blue sabers, past the perfectly engineered consortium weapons, to something that shouldn't have been there. It was old. God, it was old. The scabbard was worn leather, cracked and faded. The hilt was wrapped in cloth that had once been red, but had darkened to the color of dried blood. There were no lights, no power indicators, no safety features. It was just steel and leather and centuries of history. "What are you doing, Chun?" Instructor Voss's voice cut through the hall. Every eye turned to her. Mira's hand closed around the hilt. "There's been a mistake, sir. This weapon was placed on the rack by error. Then choose another." Mira drew the sword. The blade sang as it cleared the scabbard, a sound like a tuning fork struck in a cathedral. The steel was dark, almost black, with patterns that swirled like smoke frozen in metal. It was longer than the training sabers, heavier, and it had no safety protocols because it had been forged in an age before safety protocols existed. The room went silent. "That," Voss said slowly, "is not a training weapon." "No, sir, it's not. Where did it come from?" Mira looked at the blade. She knew this sword. She had seen it hanging above her uncle's fireplace every Christmas since she was 6 years old. She had listened to his stories about it, about the family that had carried it for generations, about the blood it had spilled and the lives it had taken. She had begged him to let her hold it, and he had always refused. "I can't let you touch it," he would say. "Not yet. This sword chooses when it's ready. And trust me, kid, when it calls you, you'll know." She knew now. "It belongs to my family," she said. "It's been in my family for 400 years. I don't know how it got here, but it's mine." Krix laughed. "Is this a joke?" "Voss, tell her to put down the antique and pick up a real weapon. I want to humiliate her properly." "Chun," Voss said, and there was something in his voice now, something almost like uncertainty. "Regulations require the use of approved training equipment. That sword is not approved. It's not even cataloged." "Then catalog it." "I can't simply catalog an unknown weapon in the middle of an assessment." Mira looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since she'd arrived at this academy. She saw the 4 arms, the stone-carved face, the cold eyes. She saw the consortium uniform, the badges of rank, the symbols of an empire that had grudgingly allowed humanity into its ranks but had never, not once, treated them as equals. "Sir," she said, "in the 6 months I've been at this academy, I have been insulted, assaulted, sabotaged, and humiliated. I have had my work stolen, my room vandalized, and my species mocked. I have filed 17 complaints with the administration. 17. Do you know how many were investigated?" Voss said nothing. "0. Not one. Because humans don't matter here. We're tokens. We're proof that the consortium isn't xenophobic, even though everyone knows it is. We're supposed to fail quietly and go home and tell our people that we just weren't good enough." "Chun, this is not the forum for—" "I'm not finished." The words came out sharp enough to cut. Krix's smile faltered. The other students shifted uncomfortably. Even Voss seemed taken aback. "This sword," Mira continued, "was carried by my great-great-great-great-grandfather at the Battle of Waterloo. It was carried by his daughter when she defended her village from bandits. It was carried by her son when he fought in the trenches of the First World War. It was carried by every generation of my family, through every war, through every crisis, through every moment when someone told them they couldn't win, and they won anyway." She raised the blade, and the overhead lights caught the smoke patterns in the steel. "And now it's here, in my hand, in this hall, and I am telling you, instructor, that I am going to use it. Not because I want to break your rules, but because this sword didn't travel across half the galaxy and 400 years of history to sit on a rack while I get beaten with a glowing stick." Silence. Krix's crest had gone from crimson to pale purple, a velvery sign of uncertainty. He looked at Voss, waiting for the instructor to intervene, to restore order, to put this ridiculous human in her place. Voss looked at the sword. He looked at Mira, and then, slowly, he stepped back. "The combat assessment will continue," he said. "Combatant 17 has selected her weapon. Combatant 29, select yours." Krix grabbed a training saber from the rack. His hand was shaking slightly. Good. They faced each other across the obsidian floor. Around them, the other students formed a ring, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and disbelief. The holographic displays flickered to life, projecting their names and species in letters 3 meters high. Krix Volmar Velthari. Mira Chen human. Rules of engagement, Voss announced. Combat continues until yield or incapacitation. Lethal force is prohibited. Begin on my signal. Krix dropped into a fighting stance, his saber humming. He was good, Mira knew. He had trained since childhood, had access to the finest tutors, had genetic advantages that made him faster and stronger than any human could ever be. But he had never fought anyone holding 400 years of accumulated rage. You know, Krix said, circling slowly, I'm going to enjoy this. When I'm done with you, they'll ship whatever slept back to Earth in a box. Your species will finally learn where it belongs. Mira said nothing. She watched his feet. Nothing to say? No more speeches? I thought humans loved to talk. It's all you're really good for. That and dying. His feet shifted. His weight transferred. He was about to move. You know what I think? Krix continued, his voice dripping with contempt. I think that sword is exactly like your species. Old, outdated, and completely outmatched by superior technology. He lunged. The training saber cut through the air in a blue arc, aimed at her shoulder. It was fast, impossibly fast, the product of Velthari reflexes and years of training. It should have connected. It should have ended the fight in one humiliating stroke. It didn't. Mira moved, not away, not backward, not in retreat. She stepped into the attack, inside its arc, so close she could smell the chemical scent of Krix's scales. Her sword came up not to block, but to redirect. The ancient steel meeting the energy blade with sound like a thunderclap. The impact ran up her arms, into her shoulders, down her spine. And the training saber, that perfectly engineered consortium weapon, flickered. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Mira's pommel struck Krix's wrist. She felt bones shift under the impact. Hurt as this of pain and surprise. His grip loosened. She brought the sword around in a tight circle, not slashing but controlling, using the blade to trap his arm, to twist, to leverage. He tried to pull back. Too late. She was already moving, already inside his guard, already where he didn't expect a human to be. Her foot hooked his ankle. Her shoulder drove into his chest. And Krix Volmar, son of Admiral Volmar, heir to one of the most powerful families in the consortium, went down hard. He hit the obsidian floor with a crack that echoed through the hall. His training saber clattered away. Before he could rise, before he could even process what had happened, Mira's blade was at his throat, not touching, but close enough that he could feel the cold radiating from 400 years of steel. The hall was silent. Completely, utterly silent. Yield, Mira said. Krix stared up at her. His crest had gone white, the Velthari color of shock. His eyes were wide, his breathing ragged. He looked at her like she had grown a second head, like she had broken some fundamental law of the universe just by existing in this position with this weapon at this moment. That's not you can't. Yield. This is impossible. Humans can't. Mira leaned closer, close enough that only he could hear her next words. My great-great-great-great-grandfather killed 17 men with this sword. My uncle killed 4. I've never killed anyone. But I promise you, Krix, if you make me ask again, I'm going to start practicing. He yielded. Mira stepped back. She lowered the sword. She turned to face Instructor Voss and the 40 students who were staring at her like she had just performed a miracle or committed a crime or possibly both. Combat concluded. Voss said. His voice was strange, almost mechanical. Winner, Combatant 17. Mira Chen. Human. The holographic display updated. Her name, her species, her victory. Floating there in letters 3 meters high, for everyone to see. Krix was helped to his feet by 2 of his friends. His wrist was already swelling. His pride, Mira suspected, was in even worse shape. He looked at her with hatred. So pure, it was almost beautiful. This isn't over, he said. No, Mira agreed. It's not. She walked back to her position, number 17, and stood there with the sword still in her hand. The other students gave her space. More space than they had ever given her before. The assessment continued. More fights, more pairings, more displays of alien combat prowess. But something had changed. The laughter was gone. The contempt was muted. When they looked at her now, they looked at the sword too. They looked at it and wondered, what else had the humans been hiding? At the end of the session, Instructor Voss approached her. His stone-carved face was unreadable, but his 4 hands kept clenching and unclenching at his sides. "That sword," he said. "I need to confiscate it for analysis." "No, that wasn't a request. Chun, unknown weapons are not permitted on Academy grounds." Mira looked at him. She thought about the 17 complaints she had filed, the 0 investigations, the 6 months of suffering in silence, the way these people had treated her, treated all humans since the day they arrived. "This sword," she said, "has been in my family for 400 years. It's killed enemies of my bloodline on 6 continents, and now, apparently, on other planets too. So here's what's going to happen. Instructor, I'm going to walk out of this hall with my weapon. I'm going to take it back to my quarters. And if anyone tries to take it from me, if anyone so much as touches it without my permission, then the next person it kills will be the first one in space." She smiled. It was not a nice smile. "And I'll file a complaint about it. Maybe that one will actually get investigated." She walked out of the hall. Behind her, the whisper started point 3 days later. Mira woke to find her door had been welded shut. She discovered this when her morning alarm went off, and she tried to leave for breakfast. The door, which should have slid open at her approach, remained stubbornly closed. The control panel was dark, and when she pressed her palm against the metal surface, she could feel the telltale ripples of a plasma weld. Someone had sealed her in during the night. "Well," she said to the empty room, "that's new." She considered her options. She could call for help, but the communication panel was showing the same dead screen as the door control. She could wait for someone to notice she was missing, but given her social standing at the Academy, that could take days. Or she could handle this herself. Mira walked to her closet. She pushed aside the uniforms, the civilian clothes, the single formal dress she had brought in case of ceremonial events. At the back, wrapped in the same worn leather that had protected it for centuries, was the sword. "Good morning," she said to it. "We have a problem." The sword, of course, said nothing, but when she drew it from the scabbard, the blade seemed to hum with anticipation. Plasma welds were strong. They were designed to bond metal at the molecular level, creating joints that were often stronger than the original material. They were used in spacecraft construction, station building, and military applications throughout the consortium. They were not designed to withstand 400 years of accumulated ancestral anger. Mira positioned herself in front of the door. She planted her feet, raised the sword, and focused on the weld line that ran along the door's edge. She could see it now, a faint discoloration in the metal where the seal had been applied. Sloppy work, honestly. If you were going to trap someone, you should at least take pride in your craftsmanship. She swung. The blade bit into the metal with a shriek that probably woke up half the dormitory. Sparks flew, actual sparks, cascading across the floor like tiny stars being born and dying. She felt the impact in her shoulders, her spine, her teeth. She pulled the blade free and swung again, and again, and again. On the 5th stroke, something gave. The weld cracked, then shattered, then fell away in pieces. The door groaned, shifted, and slid half open before jamming in its track. Half open was enough. Mira squeezed through the gap and stepped into the hallway. It was empty, but she could hear voices approaching from the direction of the lift. Someone had heard the commotion. Good. Let them come. She walked toward breakfast. The cafeteria fell silent when she entered. This had become normal, she realized. Every time she walked into a room now, conversation stopped. People stared. Some of them looked afraid. She wasn't sure how she felt about that. No, that was a lie. She knew exactly how she felt about it. She felt like justice. She collected her tray, standard human nutrition. significantly worse than what the alien students received, but edible enough, and found an empty table. She ate alone as always, but today she ate with a sword propped against her chair, visible to everyone. Halfway through her reconstituted eggs, someone sat down across from her. It was a Nexari, the species with 4 eyes and long, delicate fingers that split into additional digits at the knuckles. This particular Nexari was smaller than most, with grayish skin and a nervous energy that manifested in constant small movements. "You're Mira Chen," the Nexari said. "Yes." The human with the sword. "Also yes." "Someone welded your door shut last night." Mira looked up from her eggs. The Nexari's 4 eyes blinked at her, out of sync with each other, which she had learned was a sign of anxiety in their species. "How do you know about that?" she asked. "Because I heard them planning it. Krix and his friends. They were talking in the library, and they didn't notice me because Nexari are easy to overlook. We're small and quiet, and we don't cause trouble." The Nexari's fingers knotted together. "They said they were going to teach you a lesson. They said they were going to make sure the human knew her place." Mira set down her fork. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because what you did in Combat Hall 7, no one has ever done anything like that. No one has ever stood up to them. Not like that. Not with the Nexari gesture at the sword. I've been at this academy for 2 years. Do you know how many times I've been passed over for opportunities? How many times my work has been credited to someone else? How many times I've been told that Nexari aren't suited for certain tracks, certain careers, certain futures? Let me guess. 17 times?" The Nexari actually laughed. "More than that. Much more. But I never said anything. I just kept my head down and hoped things would get better." A pause. They didn't get better. Mira studied the alien across from her. Small, nervous, overlooked, easy to ignore, easy to dismiss, easy to grind down until there was nothing left but compliance and quiet desperation. "What's your name?" she asked. "Tix. Tix Karan." "Well, Tix Karan, thank you for the warning. But I should tell you, sitting with me is probably not good for your reputation." "I know." Tix's 4 eyes all focused on her at once, which was apparently a sign of determination. "But I think maybe my reputation could use some damage." For the first time in 6 months, Mira smiled at someone who wasn't trying to hurt her. "Pull up a chair," she said, "and tell me everything you overheard." The next attack came that evening. Mira was leaving the library when they surrounded her. 5 Velthari, all from Krix's social circle, all radiating that particular combination of entitlement and cruelty that she had come to associate with old money and new grudges. They blocked the corridor in both directions, and the one in front, a female with acid green scales, was holding a plasma cutter. "The admiral's son sent message," the green Velthari said. "He wants his honor back. And since you cheated in the combat assessment, since you used an illegal weapon to humiliate him in front of everyone, he feels that honor needs to be taken, piece by piece." "I didn't cheat," Mira said. "Voss approved the weapon." "Voss was wrong. And he'll realize that when we bring him what's left of your precious antique, along with whatever fingers were holding it." The plasma cutter hummed to life, its tip glowing white-hot. Mira drew the sword. The hallway was narrow, too narrow for 5 attackers to rush her at once. That was good. The lighting was dim, emergency levels only because it was after standard hours. That was also good. And the Velthari, for all their physical advantages, were used to fighting with honor, with rules, with the comfortable certainty that their opponents would behave predictably. Mira was fresh out of predictable. The green Velthari lunged with the plasma cutter. Mira stepped sideways, letting the glowing tip pass within centimeters of her face, and brought the flat of her blade down on the alien's extended arm. The impact was solid, meaty, and accompanied by a crack that suggested something had broken. The Velthari screamed. The others hesitated. Just for a second. Just long enough. Mira moved. She didn't think about technique. She didn't think about form. She thought about every insult, every injury, every injustice she had suffered since arriving at this academy. She thought about the looks of contempt, the casual cruelty, the way they had made her feel small and worthless and wrong for existing. And she let the sword teach them otherwise. It was over in 30 seconds. 30 seconds of chaos and violence, and the ring of ancient steel against anything that got in its way. When Mira stopped moving, when she lowered the blade and took a breath, 3 of the Veltri were on the ground, and the other 2 were running. The green one looked up at her, cradling her broken arm. "You're insane," she gasped. "You actually attacked us. You'll be expelled for this. You'll be arrested. You'll be—" "I'll be what?" Mira knelt down so they were eye to eye. "Sent home? Back to Earth? To the planet your consortium keeps calling primitive and backwards and unworthy of real membership? Let me tell you something. I've spent 6 months watching your people break every rule in the book to make humans miserable. I've documented it. I've reported it. I've done everything the proper way, the right way, the human way, and nothing happened. Nothing ever happens, because the rules only apply when they protect people like you." She stood up. "So here's the new rule. You come after me, I come after you. You threaten me, I threaten you back. You try to take my sword, you lose the hands you reach for it with. And if Krix Volmar wants his honor back, he can come get it himself. Room 17, dormitory block C. I'll leave the door open." She walked away, leaving them bleeding and broken in the dim hallway. Behind her, she could have sworn she heard the sword laughing. The summons came the next morning. Mira stood in the Commandant's office, which was approximately the size of a small aircraft hangar and decorated with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. The Commandant himself was a Brasien, for meters of muscle and authority, sitting behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing platform. "Miss Chen," he said. His voice was like gravel in a blender. "Do you know why you're here?" "Because I defended myself against 5 armed attackers who ambushed me after hours. Because you assaulted 5 students with an unregistered weapon. They had a plasma cutter. They threatened to cut off my fingers. They say you attack without provocation. They're lying." The Commandant's eyes, small and dark, and surprisingly intelligent for someone who looked like a mountain with a uniform, studied her for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally, "they probably are. The Volmar family has been lying to this academy for 3 generations. But their lies are backed by money, influence, and a fleet that provides 40% of our defensive capacity. What are your lies backed by, Miss Chen?" Mira thought about it. "For 100 years of people trying to kill us and failing," she said. The Commandant made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Sit down." She sat, the sword across her knees. "That weapon," the Commandant said. "It shouldn't exist. We scanned it after your little performance in Combat Hall 7. The metallurgy alone is impossible. Damascus steel, pattern welded, with trace elements we've never seen before. Our best engineers couldn't reproduce it with modern techniques. But the most interesting part," he leaned forward, "it's not just old, it's alive." Mira's hand tightened on the hilt. "What do you mean?" "I mean there's an energy signature coming from that blade. Faint but consistent. Something is in there, Miss Chen, something that's been in there for a very long time. And whatever it is, it seems to have chosen you." She looked down at the sword. The smoke patterns in the steel seemed to shift under her gaze, like clouds moving across a dark sky. "My uncle used to say the sword chooses when it's ready." "Your uncle sounds like a wise man. Did he ever tell you what happens when it's finished with you?" "No, probably for the best." The Commandant leaned back. "Here's your situation, Miss Chen. The Volmar family is demanding your expulsion. They have enough influence to make it happen. Admiral Volmar himself has called me twice in the last 24 hours, and he is not a patient man. So I'm being expelled." "I didn't say that. I said they're demanding it. What I do with those demands is another matter entirely." The Commandant's small eyes glittered. "This academy has spent too long catering to the Velmars and families like them. Rich, connected, mediocre. They send their children here not to learn, but to accumulate credentials. They treat other species as servants, rivals, or dirt. And they have been, for decades, slowly strangling everything this institution was supposed to stand for." He stood up. Even behind the desk, he was enormous. "You, Miss Chen, have done something no one else has managed in 30 years. You've embarrassed them. You've shown everyone that the Volmars can be beaten, that their precious heir can be put on the ground by a human with an antique sword. Do you have any idea how valuable that is? Mira's mind raced. You're not going to expel me. No, I'm going to promote you. What? Combat assessment rankings determine everything at this academy. Class placement, resource allocation, career opportunities. Right now, you're ranked #1 in your cohort. That gives you privileges. It gives you protection. And most importantly, it gives me an excuse to keep you exactly where you are, right in Krix Volmar's face. He smiled. It was not a reassuring expression on a Brashian face. You wanted to fight the system. Miss Chen, congratulations. You're about to become part of it. Use that position well. Use it to change things. And for God's sake, try not to kill anyone. She was dismissed. Outside the Commandant's office, Tix was waiting. The small Nexari fell into step beside her, for eyes darting nervously. What happened? Are you expelled? Are you being arrested? I heard rumors that the admiral himself is involved now, and when admirals get involved... I'm not expelled, Mira said. I'm ranked #1. Tix stopped walking. All 4 eyes went wide. Number? But that's impossible. You've only been here 6 months. You're human. You! I have a really good sword. She kept walking. After a moment, Tix hurried to catch up. What are you going to do? The Nexari asked. Krix won't accept this. His family won't accept this. They'll come after you harder than ever. They'll make your life impossible. Mira thought about the last 6 months. The insults, the sabotage, the isolation, the 17 complaints that went nowhere, the way they had made her feel small and worthless and alone. My life was already impossible, she said. Now, at least, I get to make theirs impossible, too. She reached her quarters. The door had been repaired. She noticed. Someone had even polished away the marks from where she had cut through the weld. She stepped inside and found a message waiting on her communication panel. From Volmar, KRIX, to Shun Mira. Subject, formal challenge. The duel you cheated and does not stand. I am invoking the right of rectification. A formal challenge, outside Academy oversight, to settle matters of honor. You and me, the arena of ancestors. 3 days from now. No training weapons. No safety protocols. No rules except survival. If you refuse, you will be declared a coward and stripped of your rank. If you accept and lose, you will leave this academy and never return. If you accept and win, but you won't win. You're human. Humans don't win. That's what makes them human. Respond within 24 hours. Mira read the message 3 times. Then she looked at the sword, hanging on the wall where she had placed it, the blade still dark with dried alien blood. Well, she said, I guess we're not done yet. The sword said nothing, but the smoke and the steel moved just a little, and Mira could have swore it was smiling. 3 days. 3 days to prepare for a fight to the death with a Velthari noble who had been training to kill since before she was born. 3 days to figure out how to survive an arena specifically designed for species stronger, faster, and more vicious than humanity had ever been. 3 days. She reached for the hilt. All right, she said. Let's get to work. And somewhere across the centuries, across the bloodlines, across all the battles and wars and moments of desperate violence, she felt her ancestors lean in close, watching, waiting, ready to fight one more time.